Hey everybody, welcome to today's Trauma Recovery Podcast. I'm your host, Wendy Kier, author of the book, Be More Wolf, the Survivor's Story, Breaking the Trauma Cycle. And we are talking about a very important topic today with the amazing Jackie Simmons, who I have known for some time online. Never met in person, but I do know you.
That's true. And it's lovely to be here, Wendy. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of your world.
Yeah, I'm very excited to be talking to you about teen suicide because I think this isn't spoken about enough. It feels like it's one of those taboos that just doesn't get discussed, and it should be discussed more because it's such an important topic. And I could be wrong, but with COVID and the last couple of years and the craziness that has played out, has there been an increase in young people who have become more vulnerable and more more vulnerable to suicide?
Across all age groups, it's true. And here's what happened. COVID put pressure on a structure of emotional resilience that already had cracks in it. And this is true across, like I said, all age groups, but especially among teens who are more vulnerable because, Wendy, part of their brain is missing. Their prefrontal cortex is not fully developed, so they don't have a pause button. They don't have the perspective that what they're happening to them right now, how they feel in this moment, is not how they're going to feel forever. Without that perspective, it's easier for a teen to get stuck in a suicidal thought. See, a suicidal thought in and of itself is harmless. It's normal. Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, said that suicidal thoughts are normal, especially at different points in our lives, points of change, and teens are going through a massive amount of change. So are they having suicidal thoughts? I can't take it anymore. My life is over. These are normal expressions of the worst case scenario mechanism, our problem solving brain. There's nothing wrong with them. They come and they go. The problem is when they get stuck. And when they get stuck and all of a sudden you're worried, I wonder if something's wrong. And I don't want to worry my parents. I don't want to talk to a counselor. I don't want somebody to think I've got an issue or mental health problem, or I'm going to have to go see someone. Or if you live in certain parts of the United States where there's such a thing as a must report law.
Oh, wow. Haven't heard of this.
There's a must report law, which means people in certain industries, if they feel that you are at risk of harming yourself or others, they by law have to report. And it's very precise, does not leave a lot of room for interpretation. And what happens, well, here, I'll tell you. I had the good fortune to interview the director of the Suicide Institute in New York City. This man spends his days working with clinicians in the mental health field, the professionals, to help them deal with and guide their clients through suicidal ideation. Because it's a thing, and it's not part of mainstream mental health training at certain levels. So he realized there was this gap, and he started filling this gap. And he spends his evenings on the phone talking with anybody who needs to talk. Okay, he's very into suicide prevention as he knows it. And I'll come back to that in just a second. He had a new doctor. You ever had a new doctor? You go to a new primary care physician and they give you that stack of papers to fill out. He fills them all out and he takes them up to the nurse, and the nurse looks over them, and then she goes, "Oh, are you sure you want to answer this question this way?" And he says, "Well, I'm not going to lie." And the next thing he knew, he was in a wheelchair with an armed security guard on either side of him, and he was being wheeled to the intake for the psychiatric ward for a mandatory 72-hour hold, or until he could be evaluated by a psychiatrist. Now, one of the nurses there recognized him. and said, "What are you doing here?" And he explained, and they realized that there was no judgment call that could be made on the part of the nurse because of the way the rule was interpreted in New York City.
Wow.
And so that must report rule scares people, because 72 hours out of your life, and in some states, 72 hours is the amount of time the professional has to turn in your paperwork. You could actually be held for longer.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
And it's designed to protect people from taking their own lives, because it's designed to answer the question, how do we stop suicide? How do we stop the end game? At the Teen Suicide Prevention Society, we realized that's not the game for us. We stopped asking, how do we stop suicide? And we started asking, how do we get upstream? How do we stop suicidal thinking from getting stuck inside someone's head and creating what we call a negative echo chamber? So here's what we came up with. What if people didn't need to study neuroscience? I mean, and trust me, I have. So it's like, yeah, that's a whole branch of science in and of itself. I'm a stress management consultant. I've been at this game for 30 years. No one needs to take that long to get the basic skill of how their brain really works. So what we did was we created a very simple guide. It's a 4-question guide that anyone can use to start this, what I call the suicide proofing journey, with the people that they care about. We believe in suicide proofing your friends and family. Why not? I mean, you rust proof your car. Why wouldn't you suicide proof your friends?
I love it. That's awesome. Yeah. And it sounds very friendly and not, oh gosh, I mean, that's terrifying to think that you could say something that could be misconstrued and then you could end up in holding for 72 hours. That's quite terrifying.
And, you know, it's when someone is struggling at that level, they need intervention. The problem is that, where do you draw the line? And so when we created the script, we actually created it where it alerts people to when intervention is needed. We don't want this to be something that people are guessing, because too many parents live the life that I lived of, should I say something? And too many parents are struggling with the same fear that I had, especially after my daughter's first attempt. And this is how I got into this. I am the parent of a suicide attempt survivor. And I walked on eggshells. Do I bring it up? Do I not bring it up? What if I put the idea back in her head? And I lived with that fear, and that fear that I could trigger her leaving, her attempting again, kept me from having the talk with her about it, because I was too afraid that I would be the cause of it. And I realized this is a fear that every parent faces because they don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
And they go looking for signs. They read the guides that say, you know, if they have a change in their behavior, if they have this, if they have that, then you want to have the talk. And the talk that most people have is very blunt and direct. Are you thinking about harming yourself? And parents are so afraid when they ask this question that they really viscerally can't even hear the answer. And the reason is because they've got this little thing in their brain. It's called a reticular activating system, and it acts like a filter, and it filters out what we don't believe is there. So when someone says parents are supposed to be watching for signs, they are setting parents up for failure. So everybody who's a parent, take a deep breath, give yourself a break. Your brain is designed with the belief that your kid's okay, which means that the signs, even if they're there, are not going to make it past the filter into your conscious mind.
Wow.
So it's a lot easier to just prevent the problem than it is to look for signs. As a matter of fact, we believe looking for signs is waiting for trouble.
So how do you suggest people deal with that?
I suggest they prevent the whole conversation from happening where they need intervention by doing something we call proactive prevention. And proactive prevention is really simple. We've created the 4-step guide and the preamble. And we decided we needed a preamble because have you ever tried to have the talk about sex or drugs or alcohol with somebody? Yeah. As soon as they know that you're sitting them down to have the talk, what happens?
I switch off.
Yeah,
Switch off. Don't talk to me about that.
Yeah, their eyes roll back in their heads. Yeah. So what we did was we created a container for the talk that stops suicidal thinking. And it sounds like this. Hey, Wendy, I'm part of the mission to make teen suicide a thing of the past. I have a guide that I need to practice. Would you have 10 minutes tomorrow so I can practice with you?
Nice.
Now you've done 3 things. 1, you've made it where it's not about them. Yeah. It's about you practicing the guide. 2, you've made it about a mission to stop teen suicide. It's not about them. It's about a mission. And 3, you've lit up a part of their brain that says, oh, I get to help.
Yeah.
We're all hardwired to want to help. So you've already started shifting their brain into a more positive place just by inviting them to help you practice.
That's really clever. That's really smart. I love that.
Hey, why don't we go ahead and give a demonstration of how the talk actually works with your audience?
Of course.
All right. We'll pretend that you said yes yesterday. Okay.
I'd love to help.
Hey, Wendy, thank you for letting me practice my guide to stop suicide with you. It's only 4 questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Question 1. Wendy, have you heard about the rise in teen suicides?
Yeah, my friends sort of talk about it.
Thank you. Question 2. Wendy, do you have a story? Do you have a friend who's tried or died?
I think I've had a friend who's tried, but I'm not sure.
Thank you. Wendy, have you ever thought of leaving that way?
No, I get grumpy and I get stressed out, but I've never wanted to hurt myself.
Thank you. Wendy, question 4. Why stay? What are your reasons for staying?
On this earth?
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy. I've got a bright future ahead of me. My parents love me.
Why else?
I'm looking forward to going to, I don't know why I'm putting my head in a teenager. I've no idea what I'm doing there. Looking forward to going to college, having a boyfriend.
So I've got another way to ask it for you. You ready?
Yeah.
Wendy, what's so good about your life that you want more of it?
It fills me with joy, makes me happy. I feel content. I love getting up in the morning.
Cool. Anybody watching this will notice that when you started tapping into your reasons for staying, your whole demeanor changed. Mm-hmm. What just happened in your brain? The neural network around the topic of suicide had the energy pulled from it when you started talking about your reasons for staying. And you started building out a new neural network. It's like putting in a new file folder. Nice. And the file folder's labeled reasons for staying. And everyone listening, their brain, when you started talking about your reasons for staying, their brain started matching it up with their reasons for staying. So now everyone listening has started building this buffer between them and an edge that they may not have even known they were near, simply because you were willing to have this conversation with me. So Wendy, thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I think it's such a different conversation, and it's so much more empowering.
Mm-hmm.
Because you've got the piece at the end of, well, why, you know.
Yeah.
And
why stay is
why
the
stay?
most empowering question.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody who thinks that their child or their loved one, their friend is at risk, the 3 most powerful words you could possibly say to them. This is what you say to them. Okay. There's a whole list of what not to say. Okay. We can go there. But what you do say is really powerful. What you say to someone who's struggling, 3 words. Don't do it. That's it. You say those 3 words, and then you can say, let's talk. And you listen. And here's the deal. The challenge with listening is that our brains are often hardwired to want to alleviate other people's pain, to want to fix them, to want to, remember that thing about wanting to help?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. There's a big difference between being asked to help and this knee-jerk reaction that we have to help, to fix, to heal. So to prevent that is why we created the guide. Because that actually has a name, by the way. When you have the knee-jerk reaction to want to help or fix someone, it's called corrective complex. It's the opposite of an emotionally intelligent response.
It's automatic pilot, isn't it? When someone
it's on automatic pilot. And emotional intelligence is based on awareness, the opposite of automatic pilot. So everything that we use, all of our partners who provide support for us at the Teen Suicide Prevention Society are all solidly grounded in this awareness that automatic pilot is awful, especially on this topic, because automatic pilot is run from pain. Automatic pilot is knee-jerk, I have to fix you.
Yeah.
Automatic pilot is disempowering to the very person that you want to help. And so developing awareness of your own thinking, your own emotions, building your own emotional resilience, this is the key cornerstone behind everything that we do. So the talks that save lives, we now have 4 of them. They are the 4 pillars of life. It's the ability to stop suicidal thoughts, which is what this talk that we just did. It actually takes and pulls the energy from anything around the topic of suicide and puts the energy into your reasons for staying. So neuroscience-based.
Love that.
When we started looking at what were the real challenges, what did people struggle with? They came and they told us they struggled with 3 major things other than suicidal thoughts and the fear of suicidal thoughts. Okay. The 3 things that they struggle with are negative thinking, the inner critic, that voice that says that was stupid, or you'll never succeed, or any of these limiting thoughts, the negative thoughts. So automatic negative thoughts, they're called ANTs, A-N-T-S. Automatic negative thoughts, we found a way to interrupt them by helping people get to know, like, and trust themselves. So we have an assessment for that, and it's the talk that stops negative thinking. The second piece, actually the third, okay, so we've got suicidal thinking, then we've got negative thinking, the automatic negative thoughts, your inner critic. Then we have bullying. One of the biggest concerns out there is bullying, cyberbullying, peer bullying, boss bullying, co-workers. It's everywhere, and it always has been. And we used to teach people how to deal with bullies. Unfortunately, I don't know about in other places, but when colleges and schools started creating something called a safe space, and it was designed so that people who were gender questioning, gender diverse, could have a place where they were not going to be attacked for their exploration of who they are. The problem is that it became a place for anybody to go so their feelings wouldn't get hurt. And so instead of teaching them how to deal with a bully, we're actually teaching them how to be helpless, that they can't stand up for themselves, that they can't handle the emotional challenges of other people's opinions. When we're afraid of somebody else's judgments, opinions, and expectations, or living our lives based on other people's judgments, opinions, and expectations, we have torn down our own self-esteem by definition. And so it's an unintended consequence, if you will, of that program, is that we're seeing it more and more, and suicide rates on college campuses are going up and up.
Oh, that's a shame.
It's not a cause and effect correlation. It's just that they both are happening at the same time. And so we believe that the way to stop this is to start teaching people, how do you handle a bully? Even if the bully is the one inside your own brain.
Yeah, so, that's an important thing to hear, for everybody to hear. And I say this a lot to women, because it's women that I work with, is that we will treat ourselves the same way as if we were in a domestic violence relationship. Apart from we're doing it to ourselves. You know, it's not our partner doing it to us. We're actually psychologically beating ourselves up, making ourselves small. It's a really important thing to hear.
One of the things I realized, and it was in one of the many books. I'm kind of a self-development junkie when it comes to reading. And it said, we will allow other people to abuse us only to the extent that we abuse ourselves. And I thought, holy crap. Two things. First, it gave me back all my power. Because if I stop abusing myself, I'm not going to tolerate it from anybody else.
Yeah.
That's what that meant to my brain.
Yeah, good point.
It also meant that I had taught people how to treat me. I had taught them what I would tolerate. And that's how I ended up with my private practice, helping people turn down what they will tolerate and tolerate less. But it starts with building the ability to handle the inner bully. Now, the three names, the inner critic, the inner bully, and the fourth pillar, which is the stop sabotage. Stop self-sabotage. So the inner saboteur. So we're aware, and I'm a mediator by training, and I can do court-ordered mediation, but I prefer to mediate the conversation that's happening behind your eyes and between your ears.
The most important one.
The most important one. And so the talk to stop self-sabotage is really about making peace with your past. So the talk to stop bullying is about building boundaries. And you don't stop a bully by putting a boundary in their face, because they just see that as a challenge. You stop the bullying by giving yourself permission to have boundaries. It's an internal process rather than an external process. And what happens is bullies stop picking on you because of your internal strength. They know they're not going to get what they want from you, which is an emotional reaction. When someone's hurt by something someone else says, it's because their inner bully has said, yeah, that's true, and starts beating you up. It's got nothing to do with the other person and everything to do with what your insides believe, what your internal belief system is. Because, Wendy, come on. I could come up to you and say, Wendy, your hair is green. Would that hurt your feelings?
No.
Because it's not true. If someone comes up and says something and your inner you have an inner conflict about it, that's when your feelings get hurt. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this gave me permission to own my own emotions. And from owning my own emotions, then I could control my own emotions. And I've been very blessed because the partners who have shown up to support us on our mission to make teen suicide a thing of the past, some of them and I love this. How about if you could build emotional intelligence by playing cards?
That'd be amazing. Yeah.
We've got it.
Awesome.
We've got it. That's one of our partners. They have emotional intelligence building card games that you can play with kids as young as 3 years old.
Brilliant.
And that's why we're partnering with them, because here's what I figured out. I'm so brilliant at math. Are you ready? If I want to stop suicide in 13-year-olds 10 years from now, I would teach emotional intelligence to 3-year-olds today.
Yeah.
So this is how we are, one of the ways we're fulfilling our mission to have a world where teen suicide is a thing of the past. So we're hitting it on every angle that we can, Wendy, because it is an international crisis. Every 40 seconds, someone takes their own life. That's the number from the World Health Organization. And they believe that for every adult who dies by suicide, another 20 have attempted.
Whoa.
That's 1 every 2 seconds.
Definitely.
It is the leading cause of violent death in the world, more than terrorism, war, and homicide combined.
Makes you wonder why it's not really spoken about, why it's not mainstream.
Well, let's see. The Today Show has stories on it. The newspapers are writing articles on it. Psychology Today, the Time magazine. It is very mainstream, and our brains are viscerally designed to screen out what we don't believe is important to us. Because if we didn't, we'd go insane from the amount of input. So we screen out over 90% way over 90% of the input that comes in. So if a parent is hardwired to believe their kids are okay, an article on teen suicide they might read, but they're not going to be able to apply because it doesn't apply to their kid. Will they show the article to their kid and talk about it and see if it matters to their kid? Maybe, maybe not. And even if they do, will they be able to see any signs from their kid? Probably not. Here's a shocker for most parents. I went to the local high school about our mission to make teen suicide a thing of the past. And after I was done talking about the program and talking about the book and how we want to help them break the silence, this was before we had the talk, I went around the room and I said, hey, do you have a story? Do you have a friend who's tried or died? This is where that question came from. One student after the other. One young lady lost her first friend to suicide when she was in elementary school.
Ooh.
And her second friend just the year before, and she was only a sophomore. When I left, I got in my car and I cried. It wasn't most of the kids in the room, Wendy. It was all of them. 100% of the kids in the room had a friend who had tried or died, or they had tried. And I'll bet their parents are just as clueless as I was. So odds are your teen knows someone who's tried or died. And they are accepting it as normal. This is a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, this is a problem. And here's what the Center for Disease Control says. They say, one, not talking about suicide is in and of itself a risk factor for suicide. Who knew? Trying to protect my kids trying not to put the thought in their head actually put them more at risk.
Mm.
The highest risk group for teen suicide or for suicide at any age is if you have had a previous attempt. This is what scared the crap out of me after my daughter's first attempt. It did not dawn on me that the thought was probably still in her head. I was afraid of putting it there. So I didn't want to talk about it. Now I've got two risk factors, not talking about suicide and the fact that she had a previous attempt.
Yeah.
But here's the kicker. The next highest risk group is if you know someone who's tried or died. And thanks to media, we all know a celebrity chef, a talented singer, or a gifted comedian who's taken their own lives. Every single person is in a higher risk group because of the high profile suicides. And this led me to do a rant where I've called out celebrities. I do not believe a celebrity has the right to take their own life. I believe celebrity has a responsibility to seek help, no matter what the consequences of seeking that help is. Why? Because when they take their own life, they give tacit approval to every one of their fans and followers to do the same thing. This is the way the brain is wired.
Mm.
So I say to celebrities, you either step up and get yourself some help or step back and get out of the limelight. You don't have the right to take your own life if you're in the spotlight, because the damage you do to the village, to the very people who have supported you on your rise to being a celebrity, is unconscionable. So don't do it. Don't take your own life. Do get some help and share. If you're struggling, odds are someone who's attracted to you in your fan base is also struggling. So if you share your journey, other people might be inspired to start their own self-healing journey.
I think Lady Gaga is someone who I really admire, and she openly talks about her mental health challenges and what she's been through. She's very, very open. Trying to think of anyone else in the spotlight that I can think of that is very open about.
There's starting to be a few,
Mm.
and it's a lovely thing. Frank King is a comedian. He used to write for the Today Show, for the Tonight Show. Sorry, different time of day, for the Tonight Show. And when he decided he wanted to shift from being a comedian to being a keynote speaker, he chose TEDx talks. He started giving TEDx talks on the topic of mental health and suicide. And the ability for him to communicate these topics is so amazing because he is a really funny guy. And he believes that if Robin Williams had been able to joke about suicide the same way that he could joke about his drug and alcohol rehab, that he'd still be alive.
That's so sad. That one.
When it comes to suicide, Wendy, silence is not golden. Silence is deadly.
Isn't that interesting? Because silence is what we've been taught.
We've been taught silence. We've been taught don't air your dirty laundry in public.
Yeah.
We've been taught, what will the neighbors think?
Yeah.
We've been taught that it's not acceptable. We've got a whole group of people. Now there's this thing called toxic positivity. We've been taught positive thinking, but they've left out a few steps.
A load of steps.
So let's just put the steps in. You will become more positive, not by forcing your brain to think positively. You will become more positive by resolving the issues that are creating the negative thinking.
Yeah. Let's
get upstream instead of, and I have a thing about some of the tools and techniques. Affirmations work slowly. Why? Because they're too far downstream.
They create resistance a lot of the time, I think.
Well, if
Sabotage.
your brain is struggling with self-image, self-worth, and self-esteem, and you go, I'm successful, you've got this argument going on with your subconscious mind.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be easier just to be able to have the conversation with your subconscious mind? We call it taming the elephant in the room. Let's just name the elephant and tame it. And then you can start training your brain. You can start getting control of your thoughts, which is what triggers your emotions. It's not rocket science. It's elegant in its simplicity. And it does require one thing. You have to choose. You have to choose, are you going to continue to live your life on autopilot, or are you going to live a life based on awareness?
Jackie, what is your view around denial? So I talk about trauma denial in terms of people not acknowledging the level of trauma it is that they've been through, that they'll deny it for years, year upon year upon year, for 20 years, 30 years, for a long time. And then suddenly something happens, and then they realize that there is a different way to see things.
Something happens. What if you chose? See, what you're talking about, we call a triggering event. So something triggers them, and all of a sudden they realize how much pain they've been in. Most people have early childhood trauma. And I'm not talking about ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences. Okay, that's a very specific assessment, and that's an amazing organization that does amazing work. But simply early childhood trauma. Early childhood trauma can be as simple as being left to cry yourself asleep in a dark room when you're afraid of the dark. Actually, any kid being left to cry themselves to sleep. Now, I was told there was nothing wrong with letting your kid cry themselves to sleep. What I didn't realize is that this is the root cause of a lot of abandonment issues. And it's not that there's anything wrong with a parent trying to survive early parenthood by letting the kid cry. It's simply that we have to make sure that we know what else they need. Parenting is a tough job. Nobody does it perfectly. So every child being raised is going to have what qualifies as early childhood trauma. The question is not whether or not it happens. The question is, can you give them the emotional intelligence, the emotional resilience skills, so they can resolve it early? It only becomes a problem when it doesn't get resolved. And that's personal development that can start at preschool. Unfortunately, for most of us, we don't understand personal development until we're in the workplace, like maybe around the age of 35. Our prefrontal cortex has been developed for about 10 years. And now all of a sudden we're going, what's wrong with me? Why? And I want to change something. Yeah. And it tends to happen right around this 5 to 10 years after the prefrontal cortex is developed. And for some of us, it's a little later, like in my 40s. It's just, we start to go, how can I make my life better? And then we start looking at personal development. If we've been blessed with a professionally developing environment for our workplace, we might get to personal development even sooner. But what if, instead of waiting to get triggered as an adult, we just give the skills when they're young?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So the younger, the better. And so, and by the way, the right time, I get asked this a lot, Jackie, what is the right age to start having these conversations and introducing these skills and these tools? Whatever age they are today. Today is the right time. Now is the right time. And I'm a firm believer in the instructions on an airplane. Put your own oxygen mask on first. Do not try to fix someone else until you have mastered some basic skills, and your own relationships with yourself and the adults around you or have some solid footing, because you're going to need those to handle whatever comes up with your kids. So put your own oxygen mask on first. We've got a great screening tool, a mental health professionally guided tool that screens for depression and anxiety, and it is free and anonymous. So we have that. So people can just start now. Am I down or am I depressed? Am I nervous or am I anxious? Let's just get you some answers to those questions. One of my students took the assessment and it came up and said, oh, you're dealing with situational depression. And he went, oh, well, what's the obvious thing for him to do? Change his situation. The depression went away. Mm-hmm. That kind of guidance is available for free and it's anonymous.
And that's amazing. So,
yeah, I have great partners. I have great partners. So then we have card games that teach emotional intelligence for kids as young as 3 that are used in boardrooms.
Yeah.
So Jackie, we make it fun.
Yeah, I like that there's such a variety of things that people can use rather than just, just being one tool or one technique. It's nice that there's a variety of things. What would you say to parents who feel that they've done a bad job of broaching this subject? What would you say?
Come to class, get the guide. The talk that saves lives, the talk to stop suicidal thinking. We teach it the first Friday of every month for adults, the first Saturday of every month for teens, for free. And we do that because of the donors and sponsors and partners. We're able to provide that service. So get the guide.
What's the address? What's the website address?
TeenSuicidePreventionSociety.com has all of the information. And if they just want to apply for the talk that saves lives, it's talksthatsavelives.com.
Awesome. What a great domain name.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, we tried to make it really, really simple.
Yeah.
Instead of giving it a fancy marketing, funky name, we're just like talks that save lives.
Yeah. Brilliant. So apart from the website, how can other people get hold of you?
I'm pretty active on social media. If they want to know more about my story and my daughter's journey, there's a TEDx talk, and they can find that it's actually on the front page, the homepage of the TeenSuicidePreventionSociety.com.
Fantastic. Brilliant. One thing you want to leave the audience with, what would it be?
Don't wait. Break the silence. Have the talk.
Lovely. Thanks, Jackie. Thanks a lot for your time.
Oh, thank you, Wendy.